All right. We are today talking about something super nerdy, which is digital marketing, I guess, in a sense, but really a bigger topic around just the state of your online presence as a business and where it could potentially go, where it is today and where it could potentially go as it relates to our good friend Google, which you and I, Ted, in our business, I would say have a love-hate relationship. We rely on Google day in and day out for good quality leads. Costs us a pretty penny. So when we hear things and news stories that come out or headlines that come out about, hey, they've got a monopoly on the search engines everywhere, like, Google is a default search engine for Apple phones. Like, how does that happen? Basically, anybody that searches anything in this world is using Google as their main engine and what they go to most often. Although there's things like Bing and DuckDuckGo and even social media platforms like TikTok now that obviously you can search on there for stuff. But I'd say Google probably still has the stronghold on just products and services when it comes to, people wanting to search and find, the best pizza joint near me, the best junk removal company near me, roofers near me, whatever the case may be. So when we saw that headline the other day and you and I were chatting back and forth about, well, this is interesting, where I can't remember if it was like a lawsuit or just a headline about, people bringing up that Google has a monopoly on the search engine space. It made me think like, well, what if they have to start sharing the pie a little bit, or they get sued so bad that like they're irrelevant for a short period of time, a long period of time. Like, what is the next thing that people go to that as a business owner, we want to ensure we're showing up on, so that when somebody says, hey, Alexa, give me a junk removal company in Charlotte, North Carolina, Alexa spits out Junk Raider, or they go to Bing or DuckDuckGo, like I said. So just a kind of an open-ended conversation today about that piece of business and staying relevant for customers and where they're searching. But like long term, as business owners, what should we be doing in that space to always stay relevant and innovate and make sure that if and when a time like that comes, we don't just completely fall off the map and our business closes its doors because of it.
Yeah, so obviously this is a really interesting topic, and you sent me that article the other day. And I think it was exactly that, talking about, I think it's a federal court or federal judge was looking at whether or not they are a monopoly. And I don't think it's been ruled definitively they are, and there's any kind of a penalty. But it's an interesting topic, because what if that happens? So I remember, I was young, but I remember when there was this same type of thing going on with telephone providers back when people were using actual what were called POTS lines, plain old telephone service. So that was like all the big telephone companies. So today it would be like Verizon and AT&T, but back then that would have been, I don't even remember who they were, but you had all these telephone companies, and it was ruled that they had a monopoly, and I forget which ones, but the judges came in and broke it up. And so if that were to happen to Google, how does that affect us? Well, the first thing to remember as a business owner is today Google has over 90% market share, which is astounding. That's a lot of market share. So that's the reason why, and we've talked about this so many times in our business, that's the reason why we have said that it is so important that you are betting big on Google when it comes to advertising in the junk removal business, or any home service business for that matter, because people are starting with Google 90+% of the time. So Facebook is great for brand awareness. Other platforms are great for brand awareness. But if you're wanting to get leads where people are searching, we're not pushing it on them. They're searching for it. That's how they're seeing it. Google, of course, is the dominant player. So what happens if a federal judge, or if it somehow came out that Google no longer could have this monopoly and they were broken up, and now you had other providers? Well, the first thing to understand is everything you're doing for Google today, you'd have to do for all those other search engines. So DuckDuckGo is one, MSN is another. There's actually quite a few out there. We've actually advertised on Bing and on MSN, which I think is that the same thing? We've advertised on Bing for sure, and have not had great results there. And part of it is because they have less than, I think, 5% of the market share. It might be 3%, but it's a very, very small percentage. And the audience is different. How many millennials, how many people, let's put it this way, how many people aged 18 to 45 or 55 are using anything but Google? Not very many. The vast majority are still using Google. So think of the buyer persona that's using Bing, that's using MSN, that's using DuckDuckGo. It's a very unique audience. It's usually going to be 65 and up, or it's going to be people that are extremely, if you're on DuckDuckGo, You're probably very privacy focused, which I don't blame you, but it's a very small percentage. So that's the biggest thing to consider. Since this is an open discussion, that's where my head is. I don't necessarily have all the answers because I'm so hooked on Google. Like most people, I've been advertising there for more than 15 years as a marketer. It would be similar though. If I go to Bing right now to do ads, it's similar to Google Ads. Yes, there are slight differences. There's nuance, but for the most part, if you're good with Google Ads, you can probably figure out Bing fairly easily. And I would have to imagine it would be the same thing for those other providers. What would be the benefit? What would be the benefit of having these other providers versus having to go with Google 100% of the time? Open-ended question to you.
Well, for me, when I read headlines like that, I initially have like a my heart sinks kind of, because I'm like, oh crap, like what happens if Google goes away? Like how do people find us? Well, then I come back to reality and realize that they will find us via the next thing, whatever that is. Gary Vee talks about this all the time. Like he's a visionary in that sense of like, where is the attention going? What's the next platform? I think he hit it big on like Facebook and Uber and was right. He was just right about the internet and people going to the internet to shop and do that type of stuff way back when he was talking about it in like the late 90s, early 2000s. He was right about TikTok and just the proliferation of that now. So the next thing is going to be, it's not like things are just going to go away completely. Like there is no search engine. So you just have to figure out where it is, obviously. But I think what gives me the comfort, and not only that, it's because I've told you a million times, like one of my biggest pet peeves or things that really something that really grinds my gears is like just wasting time and effort. You put a boatload of time and effort into Junk Raiders marketing, digital presence, blogs, our website, Google Ads, obviously, everything related to digital. But if Google went away and there was nothing else to go to, then I would be pissed. I'd be like,
Yeah.
God, I spent all this time and now it's gone. Like what was I doing? What were I doing here? But I think that's the thing that gives me comfort is the effort won't be wasted. I don't think, because it'll just translate over to the next thing. What's really interesting to me that I guess could be both exciting and scary is not necessarily if you go to like a DuckDuckGo or a Bing as just another search engine, because they're going to continue to have a laundry list of providers for you to sift through and pages and pages and pages if you even choose to get off the first page, just like Google. But what's more crazy to think about is something like Alexa or anything else that people may have in their home, their cars, on their wrist, on their eyes. And it's like your own little personal assistant where it says, I need a lawyer who specializes in probate in Charlotte. Like, what is the answer that's coming out? Because that's just going to feed you. It may feed you as many answers as you want if that's the input, or it may feed you just one answer if you don't define it further, right? If you don't say, hey, give me 10 of them. I want 10 of these lawyers who do probate specifically in Charlotte. But if you just say I need one, they're going to give you the best one according to whatever the algorithm is for that device. And that's interesting, but also like if you're not the company popping out of Alexa's mouth at that time, then you're screwed. So then it's going to dovetail into all sorts of conversations around like, how do people buy? Are we just going to take Alexa's word for it and go with that lawyer, not do any vetting, and just be like, here's my business? It opens up a whole conversation around, how customers go through a buying journey, and will that change it? I mean, go back to the point 10 years ago in the IT space where you were really adamant about people moving online and starting to buy, even in B2B, starting to buy IT products and services more online. I can't tell you today if that's come to fruition or not. I tend to think it hasn't, because IT sales in the B2B world specifically, not like I need to go to Best Buy and just buy a laptop. I'll do that all day, every day as a consumer. But B2B IT services and products is very nuanced, and it's very specific, and it's very consultative driven, where machines just aren't currently there yet. So outside of that specific industry, this one is a little different, in my opinion. Like, where are we going? I don't know. I mean, like that's kind of what the unsettling feeling is for me with being a business owner, is like, I don't know where to spend my time today so that I'm relevant to whatever the platform or the search engine or anything is tomorrow. I guess a question back to you is, within the social media space specifically, like TikTok Shop is big on TikTok now. Like, you can go, I bought athletic shorts off of TikTok Shop last week because somebody posted a video of these awesome shorts that were $28 for 5 of them. And of course, they're the most piece of crap shorts ever. But like, hey, I spent $25, $28, and I got 5 pairs. But like, there's a search engine there, a search box, like for products. And if I go in and type junk removal with Charlotte, there'll be people that pop up. So I guess question like, how much time do you think we should be spending in social media specifically? Obviously posting and creating content, but also being able to be relevant when people are searching for using that as their go-to mechanism to search for products and services.
I don't foresee the day that social media really truly overtakes search engines for this type of thing, for shopping, for making decisions on which home service provider do you want to go with, or even which pair of shorts. I think you did that because it was impromptu, but I don't think that's a normal thing for you to do. You're probably an Amazon guy. You're probably searching, you're doing your research online, you're going to YouTube. You're looking at reviews, then you're making that decision, which is probably usually back over to Amazon if it's not a physical store. So I think social media is still going to be the outlier when it comes to making those kind of decisions. Here's where I think it's going to get interesting. I think it's going to get interesting. It's hard to have this conversation and not talk AI. I think AI is going to become the it factor. I think it's going to completely overtake much of what we're talking about right now. So imagine think of the leaps and bounds. You and I did a podcast with your cousin when we first started. Okay. That was not even a year ago. And look at how far, such a blanket statement here, but think of how far AI has come in that time. And again, it's not even truly like true AI yet. It's really a language model. It's not artificial intelligence like what we think about or see in the movies where it's thinking for us. It's stitching together answers based on the billions of searches that people are putting out there and using like a logic-based tree almost. It's attaching the right answer together.
Well, and sorry to cut you off, Ted, but also with that, it's not integrated into society in like an easy way, like going to Google and searching is. Like everybody knows about AI. We know about the potential positive and benefits from it. But kind of like cryptocurrency, like you don't really know how to go and consume it, buy, sell. Like it takes a lot of knowledge and research to figure that out.
That's right. That's right. Because we're still in the infancy stage. But once AI has truly become, let's call it AGI, artificial general intelligence, when it's really thinking, it's processing, it's not just stitching together answers based on logic, that's when it's going to get scary. But that's when search is really going to change, especially when voice comes into the picture. If you go back, speaking of my time in the IT world at SMS Curvature, I think one of the last blogs that I put out there or just articles I wrote on LinkedIn was about this topic, funny enough. It'd be funny to go back and read that today, but I was just trying to predict where are we going with all this stuff. And one of the things I talked about was how in the future with salespeople, you won't have this kind of interaction. You won't need it because on the other end of that phone will be a bot that's using artificial intelligence, but it's doing much more than simply giving you the right answer. It's analyzing your voice. It's analyzing the stress in your voice. It's doing in a split second, it's pinging all of your social media accounts. It's pinging and accessing every question, every answer, every comment you've ever left, anything that's publicly accessible in a split second. Boom, it's searching and it knows. It creates a buyer persona. It creates a profile of Davis Fisher. And so now it's giving answers based on who you are, not simply who you are in this moment, because that's affected by your mood and temperature and did you have enough coffee, but who you are from an empirical data standpoint over the course of a decade or more. That's where this thing is going. And that's really what I'm getting at is that's where this thing gets scary. But to stay on topic, since we're talking about the monopoly of Google today, first of all, I'll believe that when I see it. What's that?
You can get off topic.
Story of my life. Story of my life. No, honestly, man, when I think about Google is so big and so powerful. I mean, personally, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're so big and so powerful that it's not going to happen. They're not going to get knocked off their high horse because they're too big. You're talking about a company that is arguably going to be a $3 trillion company very soon. They are massive. And with that kind of money comes enormous power, enormous influence. If they were knocked off that high horse, they didn't have that monopoly, would it affect their revenue and their shareholders? And yes, absolutely. So I'm very skeptical that's going to happen. But if it did, let's get back to this. If it did happen, for me as the business owner, what it means is I have more options. because I'll speak now negatively of Google, which I probably shouldn't do, but some of the negatives is because they have such a monopoly, you have to play their game. When I was involved in NASCAR, there was a common saying that was, they're the owner of the circus and you're the monkey, right? So as the monkey, you do what the owner of the circus tells you to do. Why? Because NASCAR is privately owned, right? All other pro sports are not privately owned, but NASCAR and the WWF or WWE, wrestling and NASCAR were like the only two privately owned sports properties out there. So NASCAR could do just about anything they wanted. They could hide bodies under the asphalt and get away with it. Not that they've ever done that, but they could because it was privately owned, right? So that's the thing is when you have the monopoly that Google has, they can virtually do whatever they want. And they do, including the price per click, the price for a true conversion for that lead. We have seen it go up astronomical in a fairly short amount of time in our industry. Well, it's done that across virtually all industries that I know of, right? So that's one of the things I don't like about Google is that algorithm can change. And even if you're aware of the change, do you really understand what the change means? Do you really understand how that affects you and what you need to do differently to capitalize on that change? Most people do not, right? You need a degree in computer engineering or computer science to really keep up with this stuff. So what I would like about this change, if it were to happen, is it would free up space for us to go to these other providers. And now the same way we can dominate in SEO and dominate with our Google ads, our paid ads, we could do that with the other channels, which means we have more opportunities for more leads versus today, a 90-10, and it may even be higher than that, where Google owns 90% of that market share versus less than 10% of everyone else combined. So it would just give us more options to bring in more customers. And one last thing, I promise. And with Google, the problem is, how do you define who gets to determine what is the best lawyer in your town? Who gets to decide that? Google, right? So if we're using generative AI results, unlike historically what we've done is we have been the ones to search through the results and go, okay, that one looks interesting. No, I don't like what they said on their homepage. Click back, go to the next one. What Google is effectively trying to do is take that away, not take it away, but they're trying to make life easier for us by doing that homework for us. But I don't like that. I still want to be able to do my own homework. But again, that's one of the challenges is if Google is doing that for you, they're thinking for you, it's taking that away. I don't love that. That's one of the things that in general, I'm not excited about with the future of AI getting more and more involved in everything that we do. It's effectively making us dumber and more reliant on something else.
Well, but that's the question, though, that I think my comfort resides in today with all the effort that we put in to what our business looks like on Google today.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's going to spit out answers based on what? Based on the companies that have the greatest online presence, the greatest social proof, the most displayed knowledge of the industry. Like who's got the most blogs on probate law in Charlotte? Is it Steve Jones's law firm? Is it Alex Smith's? Right. So the effort that you put into your digital presence today, what your website looks like, all the pages on it, the blogs that you do or don't have, the knowledge that you're displaying is whatever this tool is going to be pulling from, right? Like it's not just going to pull it out of thin air. It's got to pull it from somewhere. It's going to pull it. It's going to scrape the entire internet. And so, backlinks, who else is talking about you? Did a radio station endorse you at some point? Do you have an as seen on Shark Tank badge? Like, can it tie back over to that page or all these things? I think is what's cool about it. It's scary because there's obviously gorillas in every industry, including ours. That my initial thought would be like Alexa's going to say the large franchise guys first. Yeah. But I think that's some things that we can prepare for. One thing I'll end on. You went down this AI train, and for you and I, like we've explored, I guess, some AI in our business in the last couple of years, specifically with like, can we use it to even at a basic level to just field initial phone calls? And we've never pulled the trigger on it because we don't feel like it gives the customer what we want our business to give, which is like different than the experience they get anywhere else when they call. And that's a live human who answers on the first ring, who's very helpful, who's transparent about our process and our price in particular. But also like beyond that piece, which is already difficult, the business itself is very much tied to the field and what's available. Like it kind of looks like you might have a 2 to 4 slot open, but I don't really know. I need to chat with our guys in the field first and ask, so I don't just place a job and screw everybody over because they can't end up getting to it. What about the type of debris? Like this is demo debris. It looks like there's a slot available, but if it's demo debris, maybe we can't get to it until the next day when we have our skid steer. Like the industry is so nuanced, but I think where you were going was like, yeah, AI is very basic right now. Like there's a company called Air.ai that does this. And I tested it. No offense to Air.ai. I'm sure they've probably enhanced it since then, but like it was bad for me because it was such a lag with just like, hello, hey, Davis, Johnny here with Junk Raider. And I'm like, I don't like this feeling. That first and foremost. But number two is like this agent cannot successfully talk a customer through what I would need them to talk through right now. But in a year, 2, 5, 10 years, when that AI agent is what you're talking about, like they're not just pulling data points about the business, they actually are like a human. Like they're able to infer and process and be like, a minute example would be like, I can't give you this answer right now. I need to check with a field team. Like having that ability to know that is coming, I think. So, which is interesting. Back to the TikTok or just social media search engines, I do think it's important to be relevant on there. I think you need to have a presence there. I think those are probably more demographically charged than, whereas Google's like the default for everybody. 5-year-old all the way up to an 85-year-old, male, female, race, gender, whatever. We all know what Google is and we use it. TikTok, though, if you need junk removal services and you're between the ages of 15 and 33, you might be going to TikTok to search junk removal in Charlotte. But if you're 43 and you're a female in particular, like a lot of our customers are that demographic, like probably just going to Google. So I think I just wanted to mention that. And then last thing is just, if you look back over time, or not that I've done extensive research, but just things you've heard about business and how it transpires among business to business, business to consumer, relationships are always at the center of it. Everybody talks about it. And maybe it's just the salespeople that talk about it. Like, hey, get out and build those relationships and network. But I do think there is a place for, in the future, whatever this looks like, it may become even more prevalent and even more important then, because people might be so skeptical about what this AI agent is telling them to go do. Do they need to go to Steve Jones's law firm? Or should I ask my next door neighbor who just had a death in the family and went through probate as well? Let me go ask them who they used and what their experience was. And so I think word of mouth and referrals will probably be more important than ever in that time, when we have all of these tools and voices and things being thrown at us about, here's what you should use, here's who you should use, here's the product you should buy or the service. You know what I mean? Like I would go to you and your wife first and foremost about, a lot of things before I go to, an AI agent on Alexa. I might do both, but I'm probably going to put more weight in what you guys say, especially if you have experience in it, especially related to like family, kids. Like, hey, you've had X number of kids. Like my 2-year-old's got this weird cough. Like, what do you make of it? Like, sure, Alexa can spit out an answer, but I think you and your wife probably would be like, yeah, I remember when, something similar at that age. Like we found out it was, he swallowed a fur ball or whatever it is. So,
but again, man, that's what I was talking about a second ago when I said it's making us dumber, because the younger generation, right? I hate to sound like an old man, but when I think about my kids, when I think about, my 24-year-old daughter, 23-year-old son, 21-year-old daughter, when I think of them, they and their generation and below, they're growing up with these things in their hands. Not my kids, but most, from the time, like I know, I saw a kid the other day that was probably, how old is he? I think he's about 2. And I just happened to be around him, and his little brother is maybe 10 or 11. And both of them were like this the entire time. Couldn't even see their faces. They're just sitting there watching videos on their phone. The one was on TikTok, which is terrifying. The other one, I think, was just on YouTube. But they sat there and watched videos on their phone the entire time that I was around. I mean, probably pushing an hour. And as much as it disgusts me, I know that that's very common today, is these kids are growing up with that phone in their hand. So my point is, you may put a lot of credibility and stock in what we would have to say, what's our opinion. But this new generation that's grown up with this phone in their hand, where they are absolutely addicted to TikTok and YouTube and Google, they will think nothing of it. they will get almost 100% of their answers from their phone. And whatever the phone tells them, and that's why I'm saying with Google, who gets to decide who is a good attorney? Right? Is it a pay to play thing? How much influence do we actually have? Is it just who spends the most money to get at the top or absolute top of Google search results? That's the thing is I think this younger generation, though, they've gotten so accustomed to getting all their answers from here that they will think nothing of it. And that's why it's so scary is the knowledge base isn't there like it used to be because it doesn't have to be. Now the knowledge base is this. There's no reason that I have to learn and memorize because I have this thing. And now take it a step further with Neuralink and other companies that are going to have that type of technology. So, when you talk about the phone, will this thing always be in your hand? No, of course it won't, because in the near future, you will not have a physical device. You will have a device planted in your brain, and that thing will be connected to the internet 24/7. So you can just think of a question. Your brain is not actually giving you the answer anymore. Now it's basically that interface. It's tapping into the cloud, it's getting the answer, and it's sticking it in your brain. So you don't have to know anything. And in a sense, it's going to seem like everyone is a super genius, even though they're technically not. They don't actually know it, but it will seem like they do because the answers are always there about everything. And that is what's terrifying. And take it a step further, since we're getting off track here, take it a step further, the real battle, if you will, in the future is going to be between those that embrace that tech and those that reject the tech. Because if you accept that technology and go, I want to be that guy, I want to be that girl, I want to be the smartest person in the room, I want to have all the answers, I want to be a marketing genius, Davis, without ever having spent the trenches in marketing. Well, now you can. You get that interface and you'll know virtually everything. If it's online, you'll know it, right? And that is absent of even AGI interfacing with that technology. So when that happens, that information is getting filtered through AGI. So now it's not just this boatload of information coming into your brain. It's actually being filtered intelligently, including languages. Can you instantly speak another language? Yes, in the future, if you have that interface. If you don't, you're going to be the dumbest person in the room. But your brain won't be able to be hacked. You won't be able to be compromised in the same way. You won't be on the grid 24/7. But life will be a lot more difficult. All right. Will you be able to go and buy things the way you can today without that tech? No way. Will you be able to go to the hospital and the grocery store and the gas station? Like, if we thought it was bad during COVID, we haven't seen anything yet. So again, I'm off track here, but that's where I see this technology going. And somehow we started off with Google being a monopoly, but that's where I see this technology going. And I do think Google is going to be at the heart of all of this stuff. Somehow, some way, they're going to remain at the heart of all this stuff. That's why I don't see them ever losing that monopoly status. Could be wrong. MySpace with all the rage at one time, but I just don't see it.
If we were smart parents, we would start to, screw trying to tell our kids stuff face to face, and instead just go to online platforms and start building our knowledge base there, so that when they go to that place for the answers, it's just us.
Man,
feeding them articles.
I'm teaching my kids how to garden and how to take care of chickens and how to do chores, because I am not going to be that person that is enslaved to some device and is just basically a hive mind kind of person. I can't do it. Can't do it. But anyway, I know that's way off topic.
Yeah, we can go down another rabbit hole at some point, which I'm sure the audience would love, because I'm sure everybody has an opinion on it.
Sure.
But nonetheless, there's no definitive answer of where business is going, where consumers are going. I think we can just all agree that it's always changing and will look a lot different in the future than it does today. And you should always just at least be thinking about it as a business owner and strategizing about what you can be doing today so that you're relevant tomorrow and in years to come. So with that, we'll end it there. Any parting thoughts?
Good. No, I guess my final thought would simply be there's going to be pros and cons, right? If somehow, some way Google becomes, if they get knocked off of that pedestal, they're not the monopoly and don't have 90% market share, I would say it's going to be good and bad. The good is going to be you're going to have more places to get your brand out there and get leads from a wider swath of places. The bad is it absolutely is going to disrupt this ecosystem that you've built. Like for us, the ecosystem we've built in 6.5 years would be affected negatively overnight, because we've put virtually all of our eggs in that basket of Google being the core, and you would feel the pain of that, at least for the first 6 months to a year, maybe more than that. But again, once you get past that hump and once you understand how to leverage all these other channels, and that's where I see this thing going, by the way. I think what would happen out of that is you would probably see a company or companies come out with technology that allows you to syndicate all of that information to all those channels simultaneously, like the way you use Hootsuite today for social media. You'll be able to do that with, instead of it going to Google your information, it would go to all those other search engines all at one time. So I think that would open up a new frontier for other tech companies.
Well,
So that's my final thought.
we haven't even gotten into like technology as it relates to operations. Like we're just talking about acquiring a customer.
Yeah, you're right.
And we talked about it a few weeks ago, or I at least threw the idea over to you. Like, what does junk removal or really any home service product or service look like in the future?
Yeah.
Like I could see a day where we don't have two guys driving a truck and going and picking up a piano.
Yes.
It's a very difficult day to get to, in my opinion, because it would require homeowners to get really, really comfortable with this robot or whatever you want to call it coming into their home and not dinging all the walls and like maybe it makes them more comfortable. Like there's almost little room for human error. But still, that's an expensive thing on top of a luxury service that is already not cheap for most people. So I can't imagine in the short term that having robots driving trucks and picking up stuff reduces the price to the end customer. But over the long term, it certainly would, right? I'm not paying the robot an hourly wage. So anyways,
you're right.
Another fun topic to get into.
Yeah,
but
that'll be the next one.
All right.
Until next time, guys. Thanks for tuning in.